talk to me, geek out about soil science, and then also some natural repellents that you can use in your garden. We're going to go over, I have in the back on that table when you came in, there were 2 packets that look like this. These are the PowerPoints written out in paper form, so that way you can take notes on them if you'd like, and then you can also take them home. There are multiple slides. I'm not going to, read off of every single slide word for word. I just wanted enough information for you to have to take home if you ever have any thoughts to go back to. But like I said, as we go, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, which we'll see in a few minutes, or you can raise your hand and we'll also have time at the end. But without further ado, let's see if we can get started here. So we are going to start with the soil science section. So we are going to dig deeper than just the surface. So on your phones, you should be able to see this question: what is soil? And then you can answer whatever you think that is. So, yes, soil is a medium for plant growth. Why is it soil and it's not dirt? So, the simplest definition of soil is it literally is just a medium for plant growth. But that medium is a collective layering of both organic and inorganic materials that have weathered down over time. The dirt itself is only a single component of that soil. Soil is responsible for many different things. It helps perform vital functions, it's the basis of the ecosystem, and it supports life. Where does your soil come from? Like we talked about, it comes from many different things that are organic and inorganic. Over time, they break down from weathered rock and other organic matter. So that's a version. This is the one I normally take into the schools and show the kids. My favorite activity to do with them is we do an edible soil profile. So if we took a chunk out of the Earth's core, this is what it would look like, just really a lot bigger than this one. So over time, these, through the weathering process, will break down and create the most fertile part of the soil that we have today. And then plants, of course, also help add the richness to that. And then many of our, not necessarily furry friends, but hidden friends underneath the soil surface. Soil and water, they have a very good relationship, and without one, you can't do much with the other, when it comes to plants, anyways. Soil also needs oxygen for roots to grow and among many other different things, and to be able to hold that oxygen deals with the pores. So soil as a whole has macropores and micropores, which allow for air to be within the blocks, and then also for water to make its way through, and for the nutrients to live and be happy. What do you think of when you hear physical characteristics of soil? What kind of words or things, descriptive things do you think of? So put that now on your phones, type your answer in there, and it'll pop up on the screen. texture is a popular word. So on the screen, as you start seeing the different things come up, the bigger the word, the more times that somebody has answered that exact answer. A lot of good ones. Dirty, dirt is definitely dirty. Compaction, yes. Structure, microorganisms, 100%. Moist, granular, nutrition, mineral or metal content. Very good, very good. All of those are great answers, but we're going to talk about the 6 main physical characteristics of soil. What are those physical characteristics? You said it: texture, color, drainage, depth, structure, and surface features. Color. A lot of people don't normally think about the color of soil unless they go other places and they see a change. If you go farther east in the state and you get, I don't know, one that normally pops out to me is if I'm going to Nashville, driving down through Hopkinsville and to Clarksville, you see really red dirt. So that is part of their soil health. A lot of it has to do with the nutrients and the chemical reactions within the soil, which means it's really healthy. They have some of the most fertile dirt across the entire state, and it's because they have a lot of iron. So it's a rusty red color because it's good with iron. The color of the soil, like we just talked about, is determined by organic matter content, drainage conditions, and then the extent of weathering. That is, you may be able to see it a little bit better on your phone. So that is a soil pit that was dug out, and then they use that strip of tape to be able to measure the different pieces of those soil depths. That's also how they determine what type of soil it is, and how old that particular soil is as well. Texture. Texture is probably my favorite. It's one of the first characteristics I learned about in school. But it refers to the relative amounts of the main 3 soil particles. So those are sand, silt, and clay. I have examples of each of those up here separated out that you all can come see and touch before you leave. I am very much I need to touch it to understand it and remember it. So you can definitely tell a difference between the particle sizes of each of these just by touching it, and by the color as well. So the soil texture triangle, like that one, is used as you go and feel the little dirt that you have in your hand. Ways that I have done this and tested this myself is you can go out into your yard and get a ball of dirt, add a little bit of water into it, and you attempt to make a ribbon in your hand. So you kind of spread it against your thumb and 2 fingers, and the longer that it stretches into a ribbon, that means it has more clay because it's able to stick together. Whereas sand, if you have water or not, it's really powdery. It doesn't really stick. But with clay, it's really sticky because it has really, really small particles. Structure. So that's going to be the overall composition of the soil, including its organic matter, minerals, pore space, and solid matter. And that's just a good description of the actual percentages of those within the soil structure. Soil drainage. So this comes back into play with your 3 main particles, your sand, silt, and clay. When you add water, like we said, if you have a really high potency amount of clay, it's going to hold water. That's why clay has been used for pottery and things for many years, because it holds water very well. That means the particle size is really small and it is not very permeable whatsoever. So then as you go farther down the chart like that, you can see the difference between which is better and which is not so great. And the perfect mixes of each of those is considered a loam. So then if you have clay and silt together, they become a clay loam. Or if you have silt with a loam that's a mix of all 3, it becomes a silt loam, and so on and so forth. This is very important when it comes to your yards. So if you have a very low spot, and a lot of times it really likes to hold water, that could mean that you have a lot of clay in that area. And it's very common here in Western Kentucky. In case you did not know, our area is very different than the rest of the state. As you get to the lakes, it begins to get generally rocky. Here we have a lot of silt and a lot of clay. And pea gravel, essentially. So, you know, if you've ever started digging in your yard and you get down to little bitty pea gravel, not big old boulders, but gravel, that is because the last iceberg that melted carved its way through the Mississippi River Delta, of which where we sit now. So those silt deposits, which are very fertile, from those icebergs landed here, bringing some of that pea gravel with it. So we have what can be very fertile, but also pebbly, rocky, and can be full of clay as well. Soil depth becomes very important because if your roots can't reach water or minerals, they're not going to grow. So it is very important to pay attention to how deep you're planting anything, whether that's your grass, your vegetables, your trees, all of that's very important because the root zone is one of the most important living pieces of your yard or wherever you're going to be growing at. Surface features, that's going to be compaction and slope. So like we talked about, you have low spots, but you also may have a slope in your yard that looks about like this. And sometimes, water doesn't hold there at all because it just runs right off. And at times, not only because the water runs off, it also takes sediment and other parts of soil with it. So then you run into erosion, which is not a fun thing. If you have a gravel driveway and it may be anywhere near a slope, you definitely understand that because it washes and you spend more time fighting it than anything. So a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to recorrect slope. It's not easy and it's expensive. And a lot of times it takes more than one try to get there. So my advice to you on slope is to pay attention to the direction of it, where it's going, and consider what you're wanting to plant. And I don't advise planting on a slope unless you have something that's going to be used for ground cover to help hold and keep from erosion. Compaction, however, is complicated. So compaction can happen when you have too much movement on a certain area, whether that's foot traffic, heavy equipment. If you pull off in your yard to park, a lot of times that can cause compaction as well. So compaction really does impact your soil root zone because if it is so compact, not only can water barely get through, but the roots have a hard time breaking through as well. So root penetration is a must. And if it can't get to where it needs to go, you're kind of out for the count. One thing that can be used to test the compaction level on your yard or wherever is a penetrometer. This fancy tool is literally, it's kind of like a pogo stick. You just stick it straight into the ground and it reads on the top of this dial if it's compacted or not, or what percentage that it is. There's
What's it called again?
penetrometer. Sometimes it can be helpful. Other times, if you can add some different things in to help decrease the likelihood of it being compacted, that also helps. Another thing that compacts soil, especially when it comes to gardening, is if you till a lot and then it rains or you water it in, then that can cause a lot of compaction. So then if you go out, say you just tilled, you just planted, it's in the spring, we get that rain that's about 2 or 3 inches at a time like we have been the last few years, and you see a bunch of cracks. That's going to happen when you have compaction for so many inches of that top layer of soil. And it can be difficult for even your soil organisms to thrive and live through it. Okay, next question. Do you wear gloves when working in the garden? And then like on the before, you can select on your phone which answer. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, this is just a general poll. So far, it's looking like the majority are like me, and that you do good when you find them, but when you're not knowing when they are, reason as to why you will want to wear gloves. Soil organisms. This is the part that usually grosses the kids out when we play with dirt. So one of the activities that I take into the schools is I bring a bucket or a tub that's full of potting soil, some corn kernels that's dried, some birdseed, and a few other rocks and some toy bugs. And then what they don't know is I have this magic glow in the dark glow germ. So it's clear, it's invisible in the light, but you put it under a black light and it glows. So the kids learn when they play and they don't wash their hands, they're covered in germs, but then when they stick them after they go wash them really good, they're clean. And they don't have to worry about it anymore, because when they stick their hands everywhere, that's not good, and that is what gets them sick. So we talk about that a lot when we do the edible soil profiles, because soil organisms aren't just creepy crawly bugs and worms, it's the fungi, it's the various other bacteria that is living and thriving, and a lot of times very important, very needed. There are some natural processes that have to happen because of relationships with various fungi and bacteria. One of them being with soybeans, as they are one of my favorite crops because they can fix their own nitrogen fertilizer because how they were created. And with that is due to a mycorrhizal fungi within the soil that it interacts with, and over time creates nitrogen to feed itself. So it can be very important, and all of these organisms help to create those pores that we need for that air to live, move, and breathe. Fertility. So this gets into more of the, how do I make my garden better? Am I really doing enough? What I did not know until I started taking a lot more soil science classes is that soil science is a lot of chemistry, which is not a bad thing. It's great for people like me that geek out about it, because I'm like, oh, that's cool, it's like a puzzle piece. It may not be that way for you, and that's fine. I can help you go through it. It is what it is. So, like in chemistry and all other reactions, they will react with each other in a good way or not so great way, and that's okay. Soil pH. This is arguably one of the most important parts of your soil when trying to grow something, simply because it helps tell you what soil nutrients are going to be available to that plant. Certain plants require more of a acidic soil type, so your soil pH range is from 0 to 14, 0 being very, very acidic, and 14 being very basic. Whereas right in the middle is neutral. Most of the time, a lot of our crops, plants, yards prefer to be around the neutral range, anywhere from 6.5 to a 7.5. But even some fruits and vegetables prefer to be lower on that spectrum, on down into the 4s. And that's perfectly okay, it's just what they require. Some of those can even be influenced by their flower color with the soil pH. One of those being hydrangeas. If you go out throughout the spring when those start blooming, you'll start to notice, oh, well those are blue, but they were purple last year or a few years ago. Or they may have more of a pink hue. All of that has to do with the soil pH. Oh, let me go back. So with the soil pH, one of the things that you can look at, one, if you take a soil test with us, it will be included. But another thing that you can do if you're just generally curious is they have garden soil pH test strips that you can get. You can get it at Walmart. I got these at Sam's. But it's just a paper test strip that you get your soil. You put a little bit in a cup, add a little bit of water. You stick this paper in it, and it has colored blocks on the bottom. You dip it in. It'll change color based on the true pH of that solution, and then you put it based on the color on your bottle. So that will give you a roundabout idea of what your soil pH is going to be. But like I said, if you do a soil sample with us and send it off to our lab to get more analysis completed, that's listed on there. And if for your soil pH is not accurate for what you're wanting to grow. Say it's really, your soil is really acidic. There are recommendations for that to help bring that up to a level that is going to be more accurate and healthier for your plants. Soil nutrients. There are 13 essential plant nutrients within the soil. We have 3 sections. There's your primary, or the macronutrients, your secondary nutrients, and then the micronutrients. The macronutrients, based on the prefix macro, the plants need those the most. They are needed for the most vital, essential functions of plants, whether that's for transpiration, respiration, photosynthesis in any form, if it's going into the reproductive stage, if it's trying to produce a fruit or vegetable, or even in the vegetative stage, in the very beginning when it's short and small and a little seedling, those nutrients are really needed for different parts of those plants. Just like taking vitamins. I like to compare the two often because it's not something that we always get, but it's nice to have because it helps us grow, it helps us to be healthy, and to perform vital functions. There are certain supplements prescribed at different times of life, whether that's prenatal vitamins for when a woman is pregnant, or even some memory care supplements, or just generally any kind of supplement. It's all meant to help, just like these nutrients are. This is a good image of what the reaction and relationship between soil pH and nutrients are, is because if you can tell at 7.0 or back a little bit more acidic, so between 6 and 7, generally along the board, that is what is going to be most available for those nutrients that are needed. And those 3 common macronutrients are going to be nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So when you see fertilizer, which we'll talk about here in a second, is going to be looking at those main 3 nutrients. All right. So here's another question. Have you collected and sent soil samples through our lab before? Some yeses, some no's. It's okay. We hope you change that after today. All right, since most of you answered, that's okay. We're going to go on and we're going to talk about them. So here in the UK, they are very gracious to have a wonderful lab that does a lot of fancy things with your soil when you send it in. We don't see that, or I've seen it done. I don't do that part. I get to do the part where afterwards, when the report comes back, we get to help you with. So essentially what you can do is, if you are a resident of McCracken County, you get 5 soil samples free from our extension office, thanks to our district board. And with that, if you are not a resident, or if you want to buy more than just 5 samples, they're only $9 a sample. We send them to our lab. We have one in Princeton as well as in Lexington, and that sample covers just our basic sample. So it's really everything that you would need. Sometimes people want to check for heavy metals or percentages of organic matter and different things like that. But 9 times out of 10, the basic test is all you will really need for what you're going to want to do. So if you have a desire to do so, we have sample bags set out. If we're already out of those, we can get more. What you'll do, take the bags home. There's a dotted line on the front of the bag. There's 2 dotted lines actually. You will want to fill your soil bag to that top dotted line. Fold the top over and make sure it's not going to spill out. But also make sure to write on that bag where you sampled that from. Whether that's front yard, vegetable garden, peach tree, or cucumber patch. Just make sure you label it so that way you know exactly what you're getting your results for. Also with that, so when we send the samples in, after you come in, we look over the form to send in, figure out exactly what you're wanting to grow on this particular spot, or what is growing. We'll send all of that in about 2 weeks or so, depending on the time of year. It'll come back to us. We will look at it. If anything's outrageous, it will be mentioned in the test. So on that, you can see there to the right, that is what a soil sample report is going to look like. So on the left, it has at the top your soil pH. Like we talked about, it's included. In that range right there for that one, depending on the crop, it can be adequate enough. So in this example, it was not good enough for whatever crop they intended to grow. So below the bar charts, it has listed for soil pH recommendations to add 20 pounds of bagged lime per 1,000 square foot. That seems excessive. And if you ever have any issues with that, feel free to contact us. We can help you with that calculation, because sometimes that can be difficult. Then it also gets down into your main three nutrients. So if you remember, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nitrogen is not technically measured. It cannot be measured in the soil in that way. So we give a general recommendation based on nutrient needs throughout a growing season per UK's research over the years. So for this example, it's 2 to 3 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square foot. Phosphorus, so they also indicate by color if it's in a good range or not so great range. So the phosphorus and potassium are quite low in this particular spot, and they're in the red. So it means we really strongly encourage that you do apply that nutrient, because that will help your plant grow and could even produce more of what you're wanting to get out of it. That will also be listed in the comments. So there's going to be comments straight from the soil lab that will be listed below. And it usually gives a pretty good description of what's going on. And then there's also listed publications that can help you to bring up those numbers and levels as well. And then also down at the bottom, if you see the little dashes and lines, that's the fertilizer recommendation. So on these reports, you will also get a recommendation for fertilizer. Sometimes because of, especially since your reports will likely be looking like this one, it can be difficult to read. So in a second, you'll see what a fertilizer bag looks like. It's going to be in a percentage analysis. So it'll be a number, dash, a number, dash, a number. It's always going to be, should always be 3 numbers if you're doing a bag or liquid mix. And it will tell you the type of fertilizer and then how much to apply per 1,000 square foot. Nutrient availability, that has to do with, like we talked about, chemical reactions within the soil, but also other characteristics we've talked about before, whether that's soil particles, in their size, the macro and micropores available, the microorganisms, the organic matter, literally everything. But that's usually not too big of a problem. Sometimes with nutrient availability, it is just simply because you may have grown the same crop there for years and years and years. And something to consider is that plants use those nutrients in the ground. And if you don't replenish them, they're not going to just automatically refill. So sometimes you do have to replenish those nutrients to keep feeding what you're wanting to grow. And that is just a natural process that happens over time. Other times, it could be how the natural native soil type is. It may not be very high in a certain nutrient, just simply because of what it is. Each soil is unique, and it's not all going to be the same, and that's okay. As well as with if you have too much of one nutrient. Sometimes it happens because you might just go buy a fertilizer bag of 12, 12, 12 because it's easiest to find, but that can sometimes feed phosphorus when you really only need to feed nitrogen and potassium. So when you keep feeding something that's already in surplus, it's going to continue being in surplus if it's not able to use it in the way it needs. The other tricky part is a lot of these nutrients aren't always readily available in the soil, just because of whatever, I like to consider it like outfits, which is going to sound weird. So if I wear this outfit today, this is work Gracey. When I go home and I'm putting on my pajamas, that's at home Gracey. But then I'm also going to have my overalls for when I'm working out in the yard. So that's me in all cases, but I'm wearing different outfits. So each nutrient has its own little outfit based on how it reacts with the soil around it, oxygen, and water. So sometimes certain nutrients like phosphorus don't always like to react well. They lock up and they stay still, and they're not always ready available, and that's okay. There can be at times adverse reactions to that. Sometimes it can show stunting or yellowing in certain plants, but there's a lot of different factors that can cause those same exact symptoms. So when you have any issues going on, always try to consider all the factors, and soil samples are a great way to start to be able to figure out how you can help your plants the best that you can. Like we talked about, nitrogen is a really cool thing. Not only with soybeans, but it goes through a natural nitrogen cycle just on its own. I'm not going to go deep into that because that's a little bit in the weeds, but it's pretty cool. Fertilizers. So we talked about those a little bit. You have your processed and your organic fertilizers. Processed fertilizers are normally going to be some sort of granular type. It makes me think of like the salt they spread on the roads in the wintertime. A lot of times, those same salts are used for fertilizer because potassium is a type of salt. So, and plants at times need salt because it helps with water absorption and drought tolerance. But then you also have your organic fertilizers, whether that's a concentrate you make yourself, or if you have compost or manure that can become derived from natural things that just exist to be that way. So this is a plant fertilizer bag that I talked about. It'll show up in that way. And it's going to be based on that analysis. So that's technically 15% of each of those nutrients in that bag. And they normally, like that, would be in a 50-pound bag. So having to measure that out in conversions can be complicated, but we can help with that. Like I said, some other organic fertilizers that you can use are compost and manure. Both being very similar are also different. Compost is using a supply of air, water, and then your energy materials, whether that's clippings, green garden trimmings, or fresh manure, and bulking agents, whether that be corn stalk, straw, and woody materials. But then your manure is just straight animal waste byproduct that is not added in with anything else. One can be hotter, if you've heard that word before, hotter than another. Manure is normally really high in phosphorus. Both of those two type fertilizers are higher in phosphorus than your more synthetic fertilizers, and that's okay. A lot of places are going to be deficient in phosphorus, so those fertilizers are usually really good. But when you if you're in a raised bed, and you keep adding manure every year, you're going to be really, really high in phosphorus because it's not necessarily going to break down and take up as much as you're putting on. So be considerate of that as you go along, because it can cause some adverse effects to what you're doing. So soil sampling. So we talked about what UK offers. Sampling itself is a different story. There's a publication that you should have picked up at the door. Looks like this one. You can use a trowel shovel. I've seen some people use spoons if it's loose enough. But what we offer that you can sign out and bring back in are a couple of soil probe options. So we have the long probe and the short probe. They look like this. They're really easy to use. Especially this one if you're having to get into the yard, because it has a foot peg on it and you can really do some downward force if you need to. But the cool thing about this is you don't have to get this entire depth. In fact, you don't need to, because the deeper you go, the more fertilizer it's going to tell you need. So you really only need the top 4 inches, because that is where most of your growth is going to occur. And if not, there's going to be some supplemental information about that. In this publication, it highlights some important things when sampling. So you don't want to sample in a straight line, because that's not going to be very accurate. If you're going to be sampling in your yard, you don't only want to sample in your problem low spot. You want to zigzag across to make sure that you have a complete randomized sample, so you get the best average for your property, because it's usually easier that way and cheaper. And it also talks about reading the soil reports in here. So if you ever have any questions, like I said, about any of that, let us know. We'd be happy to help. All right. If you remember, how many free soil samples can you get in McCracken County? You should be able to answer on your phone. But so far, you got it correct.
Is that 5 a year, Gracey?
Yes, 5 a year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So yes, that is correct. 5 each year. So that is all for the soil sampling section. Now we're going to get into the fun part, which is some natural repellents in the garden.
Banana's supposed to be high in potassium.
Potassium.
Okay. Now, Ray has tried, and I want to say, I've seen a little improvement of, smashing that banana peels.
And using it as fertilizer. Yeah. Mhm. Some people will lay the banana straight on, just right at the base of the plant. Other people will put it just in water and kind of let the potassium, like the water, pull it out. And then you can pour it around, so then you don't have a rotting banana peel in your house. Because sometimes, I mean, you might not be putting it on a house plant, but sometimes that can also attract other unfriendly things if you're trying to keep your, whether it's your landscaping or whatever, kept and nice looking. But yeah, that's definitely an option.
Okay.
That's an organic option, yeah.
And that's from blooming.
For potassium,
Yeah.
potassium helps with drought tolerance. It helps in the reproductive stages, so to promote blooming, yes.
Okay. How long should you do the banana fertilizer before it's even, if you don't see any results, how long should you try?
It just kind of depends on how old the plant is as well and what part of the season that you're in. So a lot of it's gonna be determined if you planted it by seed and it's gonna be growing from something small to really big, or if it's 10 years old, that just is gonna change, and based on the weather as well. Yeah. But if you have more questions about that, we can talk about it after.
Thanks.
All right, natural repellents. What is a repellent? A repellent is a substance that deters insects or other pests from approaching or settling. It's often used instead of or paired with insecticide chemicals to prevent and control pests. This type of substance can come in a few different forms, whether that's a liquid, powdered solid, a granular solid, or an aerosol. This right here are the most common repellents that most people think of. Bug spray, in case that's a little fuzzy on your screens. However, there may be a need for other types of repellents in the garden, more than just so you're not swatting the whole time you're out there. All right, on your phones, have you used natural repellents before, and if so, what did you use? So this one you can type in your answer. Essential oils, yes. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Neem, we will also talk about that one. Soap, yep. Marigolds, yes. Y'all are writing this PowerPoint for me. Garlic, yep. Herbs. Lavender, yes. Red pepper, yes. Companion plants, exactly. All right, so y'all have already hit the mark and you're already there. Natural repellents. So yes, there are definitely some options, and a lot of you have already talked about those. So the main 4 that we're going to talk about today are companion plants, neem oil, soap sprays, and then a miscellaneous list of repellents and traps that I tend to like myself. Okay. Can you give me some examples of companion plants? And you can put that on your notes. Some of those of which you listed a while ago, you can include on this as well. Yeah. Yes. Marigolds, nasturtium, cosmos, lavender, herbs. particularly like the smell, which that's exactly why most insects and other wildlife tend to avoid them, is because they're not very appetizing. Not that I'm not recommending that you try them, because I don't think they would taste good based on how they smell, but they can act as a deterrent, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Yes, some other options: lemongrass, chrysanthemums, basil and tomatoes, corn and beans. Yes, all of those. And you hit it on the mark because I put it on the page. Companion plants, like you already know, are specific plants that you can plant near or next to your desired plants in the garden that will either deter insects from the area or will attract them to only themselves. Like a magnet in a sense, so that way they're avoiding the plants you actually want to grow and do well. And as you said, some of these examples include nasturtium, marigolds, your allium family, so that's going to be garlic, onions, and chives, herbs, mint and basil, sage and rosemary, as well as lavender, chrysanthemums, and then your hot pepper plants like cayenne, jalapeno, and as well as ghost pepper. So specifically, nasturtium is really good about deterring aphids. Marigolds release specific compounds that repel nematodes, aphids, and mosquitoes. So nematodes are soil-borne most of the time, so that's really good when it helps have an underground defense for your other plants. Alliums help to repel slugs, aphids, as well as carrot flies. Mint and basil help to repel flies, mosquitoes, and flea beetles. Plant mint with a caution because it can spread really rapidly and can take over your garden really easily. Rosemary and sage helps to deter cabbage moths and carrot flies as well. And then lavender helps to deter moths, mosquitoes, and flies. Chrysanthemums contain natural pyrethrin, which is an extract used in a lot of insecticides, if you did not know. And it's also effective against ants, beetles, ticks, and fleas. Then your hot pepper plants deter many different animals, whether that be squirrels, rabbits, deer, groundhogs, and cats, using their spicy capsaicin, which is within the plant, can irritate their taste and smell. And you can sprinkle flakes around your garden, or you can make a spray with water, which we'll also talk about in a minute. But always wear gloves if you're using hot peppers, because if it's hot to something else, it's going to be hot to you. 9 times out of 10, especially your eyeballs. Don't ask me how I know. Next question: is neem oil a repellent, fungicide, or insecticide? And you can answer that on your phones. Definitely some mixed ideas. And if you're thinking it was all 3, it is, because they are all in that category. So neem oil, it is derived from the neem tree. It's a natural oil used in gardening as a pesticide and a fungicide, thanks to compounds like that word. I'm not going to try to butcher that. And it also repels pests and can disrupt insect growth. I really like neem oil. I've used it quite a bit. I normally use it on my houseplants because it's generally safer to use indoors. But it also works well for outside. You can use it, like I said, as a repellent, a growth disruptor, and a feeding reducer for pests. So when something is on the surface, they're not necessarily going to be attracted to taste it if it's not going to taste good. But it can also control other fungal issues like black spot, rust, and mildew. How to use it? You can mix about 5 milliliters of pure neem oil with about 16 ounces, and a dash of liquid dish soap as an emulsifier to help it kind of adhere and stick well, in a spray bottle. And it can be any kind of spray bottle. This is the type of bottle I use. This isn't the one that I have mixed up, but I have one exactly like this in my office for neem oil specifically. As a precaution, it can be toxic to bees because it does have that compound in it to control and inhibit some growth in the insects. So please avoid direct application when bees are active. You can find the needle oil just like that. That's the brand that I use. I got mine at Tractor Supply. You can find it at Tractor Supply, Rural King, Lowe's, Home Depot. I believe Walmart has it. Most of your big stores like that, you can even order it on Amazon. And it's usually pretty cost effective. And it goes a long way. I mixed up one batch like 3 years ago, and I still have that same batch because you don't use a whole lot at one time. Soap sprays. So DIY soap sprays are definitely another option when it comes to spraying for insect repellents and control. That sudsy, bubbly soap, when sprayed on the leaves, help to create that protective barrier on the plant, making it unattractive for different insects and other pests, as well as can sometimes be really slippery or really sticky. There are different soap spray options. You can do an insecticidal soap spray. So that picture on the far left side, that is one that you can buy that's already ready to go. If you wanted to mix your own at home, you could do mix vegetable oil with liquid dish soap, then dilute the water to spray directly on soft-bodied pests like aphids. That works for both that and the mild dish soap spray. For the garlic chili spray, that's when we get into the hot pepper flakes again, or like I said, garlic. So you would mix or blend garlic and hot peppers with water and soap to deter insects and mammals. You'll want to use a mild liquid dish soap like Castile soap, or some of those. You can get Castile soap a lot of different places. That's the brand that I use, is the pure Castile soap. And a lot of them already have natural essential oils in them to scent them, which we will talk about in a minute can be an advantage based on the scent that you choose. But you can mix those with water like we said. You can also choose to use an oil. So that's why I included the oil soap spray. Sometimes that also helps because oil, as you know, builds up on surfaces versus soaking in. So that helps to create a barrier for things to either cling to it or want to eat it. Miscellaneous natural repellents, traps, and controls. This is my favorite one. So believe it or not, there are multiple different options out there for controlling pests in the garden. Here are a few more options. A beer trap. In case you've not heard, beer traps are great for attracting slugs. If you have a big slug problem, whether it's in your yard or your front porch, you can get either you get a little Tupperware bowl or a Cool Whip bowl if you're into making any desserts. Get you a Cool Whip bowl or anything like it. Open you a can of beer, pour it in, and let the fun begin. They'll be attracted to it, and they will just about drown themselves in the beer. Yes, Marianne?
I've read that you need to cover the container of the beer because otherwise birds will eat them and get drunk too.
Yes, that is exactly right. And kind of like the tequila worm in a sense.
Yeah.
But yes, they're attracted to that sweet, yeasty smell, so they can flock to that and stay right in that bowl. And because of they then get really slimy, they can't make their way back out. Coffee grounds are another way. They're very aromatic, as you know, but they also help as a soil conditioner, which can be really good with soil health and act as an added little bit of fertilizer. Vinegar. Now I say that with a grain of salt. Vinegar can be good for certain things, but it also acts as an herbicide. An herbicide kills plants, so you want to be very careful when it comes to vinegar. It can be used for ants, snails, and slugs. You would mix equal parts of vinegar and water with a few drops of dish soap and spray the solution around the base of the plants or on the garden beds. Do not spray directly on the plants. You will likely kill it. And I know you don't necessarily want to do that. There's also physical barriers, such as fences or netting. A lot of times people will use different types of netting on, whether in the commercial horticulture industry, a lot of times on commercial flowers. When the flower heads are very lush and beautiful, they'll put little, kind of like a jewelry bag around over the top of it and cinch it tight, so then different flea beetles and other bugs cannot get in and eat the beautiful petals. As well as other types of netting, whether that's, a lot of people use it also on fruit trees to keep it from the birds eating everything you've grown. Like we said, essential oils. So of those essential oils. That could be peppermint. It helps to repel aphids, ants, spiders, beetles, mites, and rodents. Lavender is a broad spectrum repellent for many pests, including mosquitoes, flies, and ticks. Clove is potent against flies, insects, and fungi, good for existing infestations. Orange, it's sweet but destroys bug exoskeletons and good for aphids and beetles. Rosemary helps to repel some pests and attract pollinators like bees. Tea tree oil is effective against mosquitoes, ticks, ants, and spiders. Thyme is strong against beetles, chiggers, and ticks. And then for a DIY essential oil spray, you can use a 4-ounce glass spray bottle, add 1 ounce of liquid Castile soap, or a little bit less. Add your oils. I would do about 15 to 20 drops of that chosen oil. Fill the rest of the bottle with water, or use water with witch hazel, and then shake before each use, or else the oils will separate and kind of, it's not good. Then you will only be spraying water, not oil. So just make sure you mix really well as you go. Some other options. Human hair. In case you did not know, a lot of animals are more scared of you than you are of them. So, in return, anything that smells like us, they will want to stay away from. When I was growing up, this was a big one for us. We would ask the hairdresser for her clippings, and then we would take them home and sprinkle them in the garden. It normally keeps deer pretty good at bay, as well as raccoons. Sometimes it may not work. And that is definitely my disclaimer with a lot of this, is it is a trial and error kind of thing. It's not going to be foolproof, and you may have to try a time or two, because some things just may be resistant, and that's okay. It's just worth a shot. Another thing that's kind of gross, dried blood. Pig and cow blood is also normally a sign that something has died. So, normally, if something is killing it, like a coyote or something else ferocious, the deer or raccoons or rabbits would want to stay away from that area because they can smell it. So, they will naturally want to stay away. Diatomaceous earth. It is a powdery substance that essentially you sprinkle around different places, whether you do it on the soil surface or on the leaf surface, and it keeps soft-bodied insects off. So whether that's slugs or various types of caterpillars that are really not good because they eat, like earworms on corn, because I don't know about you, but I despise when I'm shucking corn and there's earworms all in it and I don't get any corn for myself. That works pretty good. There's also scare tactics for wildlife. As my dad said, he would always want to put my school picture in the garden for the scarecrow. You don't have to do that. There's also shiny things that they don't like. We've used the little plastic windmills like you can get at the Dollar Tree, or pie tins and tied to a string and a stake, because it also turns birds because of the loud noise when the wind blows and it smacks. You also have some other beneficial things that can really help you out, like insects. Ladybugs and parasitic wasps are very good about attacking aphids. And parasitic wasps are really good for the hornworm that usually gets on tomatoes, the big juicy green worm. It's nasty, but they lay their eggs on the worm, the parasitic wasp does, and it essentially attacks, as the eggs develop, it attacks the worm and will eventually kill it. And then of course your cultural controls. If you notice that something on one part of your plant is really affected, you can prune and remove that part, or even that whole plant, and dispose of it completely. If you can remove the source, a lot of times you can help yourself. But by removing it, I mean getting rid of it, throwing it away, not just throwing it out of the garden and hope that, it kind of dies down. If it's still in a close enough proximity, it's still going to be attracted to that general area.
Can you order the beneficial insects?
You can, believe it or not, order bugs online. It is a weird purchase, you would think, but you can order some of those. A lot of people use them in the commercial industry, like in greenhouses, because they can keep them in a controlled environment. But yes, you can definitely order some of those to have at home. Another one is coyote urine. If you are a hunter and you by chance go to the hunting store, you can purchase some coyote urine and sprinkle it around as well. There's also some dry formulations of shakeable stuff that you can get at different farm stores. There's one I've used in the past that is really potent with garlic, and it normally deters rabbits well, because I have them eating my peppers daily, but that's definitely a good option. So, one of the last questions. Did any of the miscellaneous repellent options catch you by surprise? I'm hoping you say yes. But if not, that's okay. Yeah.
Essential oil mixture,
Huh?
is that gonna be harmful to bees as well?
Yes, some of those can be, yes. So you would definitely want to, like with the neem oil, if they are active and kind of swarming around, try to wait, if you can, to avoid spraying them. Yeah, and with that, like what Jim said, you can spray later in the evening. A lot of the bugs or insects aren't going to be as active at night, unless they are a soft-bodied insect. Cutworms and things of that nature really like to be out at night, especially if there's going to be rain or a full moon or a lot of light from the moon. So that is something to take into consideration as well. All right, I'm happy that I was able to stump a few of you. So now my encouragement is to try it out. Like we talked about, there's multiple different options to choose from and pair together for best repellent and control of the garden. You can use companion plants, neem oil, soap sprays, and many other miscellaneous repellents and traps. You can choose to do one, or you can do a combination of all of them. It's just completely up to you. As always, it's very important to wear protective equipment suitable for your at-home experiment. When in doubt, always wear gloves to protect your hands and skin from any possible reactions. And don't forget to test it out first. Do it on a small spot before you spray the whole garden, because if you accidentally mix vinegar in, you would kill your whole garden, and we don't want that. Questions or comments?
On that potassium,
Yeah.
or banana,
Yeah,
can you dehydrate it and make like a powder out of it?
I would think so. Yeah.
Once it gets wet, it-
Yeah, because it would hold that nutrient. Mm-hmm.
Dang, I thought all them bananas away. You want any more?
You can get a big jar and
Run.
fill it with water and then put the bananas in and then use that.
Anybody have any other questions or comments?
What was,
on the, what you done? Well, go
what
ahead.
was that you said you use as a repellent?
Neem oil.
No, something else that you buy.
Oh, the shakeable?
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of it, but it comes in a little can. I think the bottle is black, but it's just wildlife repellent, and you can get it at, I believe I got it at World Cans.
If you want to talk about what kind of things does that do?
That, I have not tested personally, so that may be an experiment that you do yourself. You can try it on one small spot and see if it affects anything with growing your plant, and then we can also see about testing the soil pH after if it has any effect. That's a good question.
I'm a container gardener.
Yeah,
How does that reflect me growing in container?
yes, so container
Because
gardening,
the soil is different,
yes,
and the
exactly.
air is different.
Exactly. Thank you. That is a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So container gardening is going to be a little bit different. It is still valuable to consider on down the road if you've been using that same soil and that same plot or raised bed for a little while. You may want to consider going ahead and pulling a test, because it will help you get a more accurate idea of what nutrients you already have. And then after that, you can then consider what to add. If you just keep adding blindly, you may be contributing to a problem. So definitely it is going to be more important to consider adding supplemental fertilizer if you're using a raised bed or something that you're definitely using potting soil. Most potting soils have some sort of fertilizer in it, like if you get the Miracle Grow brand one, that's going to have a little bit of fertilizer in it. And whether or not if it's instant or slow release also has an impact on that as well. So yes, definitely pay attention.
I buy bales of
The ProMix,
the Pro Mix, and what I do in October,
Mhm.
I get about 11 cubic feet or more. And I let nature, the hydrogen and nitrogen come to saturated, so it's ready to go in April when I transplant. Is
Exactly.
there anything else that's really coming down I don't know about?
Not particularly. The main thing that's gonna be atmospheric that you're gonna be taking in is atmospheric nitrogen, which is good because your plant needs that naturally. Normally, thankfully, because we live where we do and not in somewhere like New York or Chicago that has a lot of intense industry, we don't have to necessarily worry about as much air pollutants as other areas would. If you do have concerns about that on some of your plants, if they start showing any effects of something and you can't come up with a reason as to why it's causing that symptom, we can talk later on and we can see about if we can fix that or test for it.
On the, well, I can't pronounce it right,
The diatomaceous earth,
yeah, it says earth, I think of dirt, so.
yeah, it's clay. It's powdered clay dirt, yeah,
You can eat it.
yeah.
So you just sprinkle that around the plant then, what about digging it in, working it into the dirt?
You can, but at risk with that, you also risk killing your earthworms, and they are very beneficial to your soil. So I don't necessarily recommend tilling it in, but, more so sprinkle it on top, and you can do it on top of your plants as well. It kinda acts like 7 dust does. It repels things and it makes it chalky.
Okay, so the earthworms should go around it then, theoretically, away from it?
Well, if it's in the dirt, it
Well,
can,
but if I sprinkle it on top,
yeah. If you sprinkle it on the top, they're normally gonna stay below unless generally if it's gonna rain or they get out and move, but
yeah.
most of the time, it would be okay. Any other questions? All right. Yeah. Mealybugs? Not specifically off the top of my head, but I'll write that down and I'll get your contact information and I'll see about that. Before you leave, if you would, you can get off of that website thing now, and if you'll scan that QR code, it'll take you to a survey,